Once upon a time, in a kingdom far away, there lived a beautiful princess named Snow White. She was the daughter of a kind and noble king and a queen who was known for her beauty and grace. Sadly, the queen fell ill and passed away when Snow White was just a baby. The king, heartbroken, remarried a woman who was beautiful but vain and cruel but vain and cruel. This new queen possessed a magical mirror that she would consult daily, asking,
"Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest of them all?"
For many years, the mirror would reply,
"You, my queen, are fair. It is true. But Snow White is even fairer than you."
This infuriated the queen, who could not bear the thought of anyone being more beautiful than she. As Snow White grew, her beauty blossomed, and the queen's jealousy deepened. One day, the queen could no longer tolerate the thought of Snow White overshadowing her. She summoned a huntsman and ordered him to take Snow White deep into the forest and kill her. The huntsman, a good man at heart, could not bring himself to harm the innocent girl. Instead, he took her to a secluded glade and told her to run far away and never return to the castle. Snow White, terrified and heartbroken, fled into the dark woods. As she wandered through the forest, Snow White stumbled upon a small cottage. Exhausted and hungry, she knocked on the door, but no one answered. She pushed the door open and entered. Inside, she found a cozy little home with 7 tiny chairs and 7 small beds. Snow White, too tired to think, lay down on one of the beds and soon fell asleep. The cottage belonged to 7 dwarfs who worked in the nearby mine. When they returned home that evening, they were surprised to find Snow White sleeping in one of their beds. At first, they were startled. But when she awoke and told them her story, they felt compassion for her. The dwarfs welcomed her into their home, and Snow White quickly became a beloved member of their little family. She cooked, cleaned, and took care of the dwarfs, who in turn protected her from the wicked queen. Meanwhile, the queen discovered that Snow White was still alive. Furious, she devised a plan to eliminate her once and for all. Disguised as an old peddler woman, she visited the dwarf's cottage and offered Snow White a beautiful poisoned apple. The queen knew that Snow White would be tempted by the fruit's vibrant red color and sweet aroma. Despite the dwarf's warnings to never open the door to strangers, Snow White, feeling lonely and curious, opened the door to the old woman. The queen, with a wicked smile, presented the apple to Snow White. "Just one bite, dear child, and you will be the fairest in the land," she coaxed. Unable to resist, Snow White took a bite of the apple and instantly fell to the ground, lifeless. When the dwarfs returned home and found Snow White, they were heartbroken. They placed her in a glass coffin, mourning her loss. The news of Snow White's beauty and tragic fate spread throughout the kingdom, and many came to pay their respects. Among them was a handsome prince who had heard tales of her beauty. When he saw her lying in the coffin, he was struck by her grace and beauty. The dwarfs rejoiced, and the prince, overjoyed to see her alive, asked for her hand in marriage. Snow White accepted, and they returned to the kingdom together, where they were married in a grand ceremony. The wicked queen, upon learning that Snow White was alive and had married the prince, was filled with rage. In her fury, she rushed to the castle, but the prince and Snow White were ready for her. With the help of the dwarfs and the people of the kingdom, they captured the queen and banished her from the land forever. Snow White and the prince ruled the kingdom with kindness and fairness, bringing joy and prosperity to their people. They often visited the dwarfs, who became honorary members of the royal family. Snow White's heart was filled with love and gratitude, and she never forgot the lessons she learned during her time in the forest. And so Snow White and her prince lived happily ever after, surrounded by friends and loved ones, in a kingdom where beauty was not just skin deep, but found in the kindness and love shared among all.